Of course, Colorado has been center stage all day today. People around the world talking about our state. There's a live look at the Supreme Court in Washington. That's where oral arguments took place today as to whether or not Donald Trump should be on the state primary ballot. The lead petitioner, Norma Anderson, longtime Republican, she says she's optimistic that the court would bar Trump from appearing on Colorado's ballot.
In opposition, the chair of the Colorado Republican Party dismissed the case as election interference.
It's very simple. There's 4 reasons you can't be on the ballot. And if they truly believe in our democracy, they will accept it. Just as I have accepted things that have been passed that I don't agree with.
But we feel strongly that we're going to succeed on the merits and look forward to seeing Donald Trump on the ballot in Colorado and certainly on the ballot for the November election.
The case has drawn overwhelming attention from media across the globe. A crowd of reporters gathered to listen to Anderson outside the Supreme Court building after arguments. Marshall Zellinger said it kind of felt like the media of attention you'd see at a Super Bowl.
Of course, we didn't send Marshall Zellinger to the Super Bowl. We sent him to Washington. There he is, right in front of the Supreme Court. Marshall, of course, it's going to be a while before we hear the court's opinion on this case, but it feels like many are saying we already do know the outcome.
Sure, based on the questions and the frustration by some of the justices on the Supreme Court, it didn't feel great if you're on the Colorado side of things, wanting to remove former President Trump off the ballot. Out here, this was filled with a few protesters, lots of media. You can see the media presence has minimized a bit from that Super Bowl presence, and apparently we have requested this whole space to ourselves. No, we really didn't. While it was interesting to see the interest out here, it was really neat to see what was going on inside. It was a lesson in observing body language from the Supreme Court justices. For instance, conservative Justice Samuel Alito, fourth from the right, reclined nearly horizontal for extended periods of time. Liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson on the far right, seemingly frustrated with the answers from the attorney representing Norma Anderson's side. Several justices, including the Chief Justice, who of course sits in the middle, had concerns about Colorado's power on other states if the court allowed Colorado to remove Trump from the ballot.
I would expect that a goodly number of states will say whoever the Democratic candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others for the Republican candidate, you're off the ballot, and it'll come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence.
Colorado Supreme Court determined that Trump engaged in insurrection on January 6, 2021, and that the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause allowed him to be disqualified from the primary ballot. It took almost an hour and the 9th justice to bring up that topic of insurrection. It was a question to Trump's attorney, Jonathan Mitchell, about the Colorado court conclusion that Trump did indeed engage in insurrection.
For an insurrection, there needs to be an organized, concerted effort to overthrow the government of the United States through violence. And this
so
riot
the point is that a chaotic effort to overthrow the government is not an insurrection?
No, we didn't concede that it's an effort to overthrow the government either, Justice Jackson. Right? None of these criteria were met. This was a riot. It was not an insurrection. The events were shameful, criminal, violent, all of those things, but it did not qualify as insurrection, as that term is used in Section 3.
The court seemed less interested in the topic of insurrection as it did about a state's ability, one state's ability, Colorado, to remove someone from the ballot and then have that ripple effect impact other states, meaning would other states then also remove Trump from the ballot? Would other states keep him on? Would it be uneven? And would it be used as retribution for other candidates that other states don't like? Tom and Kim.
Marshall, it was interesting, if you listened a little bit for a while, to hear that discussion and how it took so long to get to that insurrection part. But it was obvious they had read the briefs, and that's what we don't, we tend to forget. There was these lengthy briefs that they had read before, and they knew exactly what they wanted to hone in on.
Sure, and I don't know if they discuss among each other the topics and who's going to go first about what, but it seemed like they were on the same wavelength on some of these issues. We knew they would talk about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and the history of it. the insurrection part, again, took a really long time, and I don't believe the Trump side ever really focused on that much in their brief. And then this idea, you talk about states' rights, and that's what Norma Anderson is big on, that this is a states' rights issue. They took a lot of time talking about what if one state did this, the impact it would have on all states, and is this really an issue for Congress across the street from the U.S. Supreme Court, or is it something that a state can do based on what we saw? It doesn't look good for Norma Anderson's side that wants it to be a state issue.
All right, Marshall, of course, we'll have much more from you coming up at 5 o'clock and even more on next at 6. Thanks for joining us from the Supreme Court in Washington. So the former president continues to say that all of this is simply election interference.
He spoke during a press conference this afternoon at Mar-a-Lago.
I thought the presentation today was a very good one. I think it was well received. I hope it was well received. You have millions of people that are out there wanting to vote, and they happen to want to vote for me or the Republican Party, or whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it.
We will have continued coverage throughout the night, including tonight on Next with Kyle Clark. You can find our full coverage on 9news.com and 9 News Plus.